You are listening and watching the We Are West Ham podcast with me, Will Pugh, and this is the opposition view ahead of West Ham United's game against Brentford at home, Saturday, 3 o'clock, nice and traditional on the 15th of Feb, after we willingly took a week off just to give the players a rest. That's why we bailed out of all the cups at the earliest possible opportunity this season. I'm delighted to say joining us once again is a friend of the podcast. It's talkSPORT's very own Natalie Sawyer, and as well as being one of the nation's most eminent broadcasters. Nat is a huge Brentford fan, of course. Nat, how's it going? Last time I spoke to you, you were mocking me about my David Moyes love on the weekend sports breakfast on talkSPORT.
I mean, I don't want to say it was mocking. It's just you keep putting these posts out about loving him, and it's like, come on, you've got to move on. He's arrived the manager.
That's true. I must admit, you did test the bounds of my professionalism on the weekend when I sort of nearly had to admit that I was still in love with David Moyes, even though he'd abandoned our football club. But now I've been told in no uncertain terms by anyone who cares to listen to what I've got to say that it's time to get over it. So yeah, I'm with you.
You love someone. It's very hard to let it go.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Talk to me about Brentford. For the first half of the season, you were absolutely unstoppable at home. Since the turn of the year, you're absolutely pants at the G-Tech, and you only ever win away.
I know it's really weird. But then I always sort of kept saying that a lot of the clubs that we played, maybe we hadn't truly contested really. And I obviously you played you, but we only drew with you. So obviously you were much better than
it certainly wasn't else. A test, was it?
Well, I don't know. But like I kept saying, the Newcastle game for me was going to be the true test at that point in the season at home, where I felt like maybe that's when we can say whether or not we're actually quite good. And we won that one quite convincingly in the end. But yeah, since then, it's just been a plummet, losing to Forest at home, losing to Plymouth at home. Like you, we just wanted to get out of the cup. We weren't bothered. And annoyingly, we're the ones that gave the cup shock, and then they go and beat Liverpool. So they'll forget about us because they'll just be celebrating Liverpool. So I can't even put my finger on it why we've been pants at home, but we really have been pants at home recently.
Yeah, I mean, you're sort of just looking at a few of your recent results. You lost at home to Tottenham, and then that takes some doing, to be fair, because they can't buy a win at the moment. You beat Crystal Palace away 2-1, Liverpool at home 2-0, home 2-2 draw with Man City, not bad. You mentioned that Plymouth defeat at home in the FA Cup, and then wallop Southampton 5-0 away after you lost to Arsenal on New Year's Day. That's your 2025 so far. Any sort of standouts to that or reasons why?
Well, do you know what? The Tottenham one was really interesting because I think a lot of Brentford fans went into that thinking this is the first time we might actually be able to beat them at home. We've not beaten them at home in the Premier League. And we all thought this would be a great chance, but they didn't play like Tottenham usually play. I mean, Andrew's always gone on about Ange Ball and how he just won't change his style. My God, they were
just who I am, mate.
I know, yeah, mate. They were so pragmatic. They didn't have a high line. It was like, I think Brentford probably went into that thinking they would play the same way, and yet he completely changed it. And it was very hard for us to make any kind of breakthrough. I mean, their first goal came about fortuitously from an own goal. But yeah, it was just one of those games where it was like, goodness sake, like, why us? Why test it out on us, this new style? We're expecting something different. Yeah. The Liverpool game was, I think, we were unlucky to lose that. I think a draw might have been fair. I mean, I'll say that Cass was there as well. And Cass, he's a Liverpool fan, but he was saying probably a draw. Or it wasn't a 2-0 game. It didn't feel like a 2-0 game. We defended so well. I mean, they did have a ridiculous amount of shots in the game, but in fairness, a lot of them were half chances. So they weren't really truly testing us. But yeah, then they brings on Darwin Núñez, and strength on the bench is the difference between what they were able to do and our people that came off the bench just were not game changers at all. So yeah, it's a funny one. I don't even know how to sum it up really, because you go into every game with a little bit of optimism that we might be able to do something, and it's just not working at the moment. I think it's like 2 wins in 10 now, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, you're still 11th in the league, and I mean it's a really weird season this season, isn't it? I mean, I love it. I love it when see the big teams struggling a bit, seeing teams like Nottingham Forest absolutely smashing it. I think it's brilliant, and I think that's what a lot of football fans these days like find a bit dull about the Premier League sometimes is the feeling that sometimes feel a bit predictable. So I love it when it's a bit chaotic. Just annoying when West Ham are the victims of that rather than beneficiaries. But what's the feeling? I always like asking this question. What's the feeling among fans at the moment? Because I feel like that's a good gauge of where a club's at, when it's easy to point at the table and say how many wins and goal difference and tactics and all that. But what's the feeling the fans? How does it feel when you go to the G-Tech at the moment? Is there positivity, grumblings, contentment? What is it?
I think overall it's still positive. I think a lot of times recent results, we've come away thinking, oh, we should have got more out of that. We could have got more out of that type of attitude. The weird thing is, and what I will say is, the atmosphere isn't great at the G-Tech. You know, there was a period where it was fabulous. It was
generally, okay.
This season, it's been really weird. Even Thomas Frank has picked up on it and sort of mentioned it a few times, that he wants the fans on board a lot more. And it's just been a bit weird. Having said that, the Liverpool game, the atmosphere was brilliant. But yeah, it was just odd. I don't really understand why the atmosphere isn't as good as it used to be. And I'm not saying we're all, we're singing from the minute one till the end, but sometimes it just dips a little bit and it's very quiet. And you hate having a soulless bowl of an arena to play in. And I do my best, Will, to try and get it going, but nothing happens. So,
well, it's hard for them all the rest of the fans to hear you from those posh seats, isn't it? That's the problem. all those padded seats in the main stand. I've sat in that stand before now. Don't worry, I know it's difficult to get an atmosphere going from up there.
It's true. But I genuinely think most Brentford fans will be just happy that we're not in a relegation fight. And yes, this is our fourth season, so there's a part of you that thinks, well, we've got to be aiming more than just being in a relegation fight. But 4 years is still pretty young in a Premier League season, in a Premier League sort of time. And as much as we love the idea of pushing for Europe and all that, and being one of these Forests and Bournemouth and Fulham who are just upsetting the pack at the moment, I'd be quite happy to finish mid-table and just have another season to look forward to at this present moment, and hope that one day we can build and maybe just push a little bit further up the table.
Yeah, I think in a weird way, and I don't mean this at all in sort of in a patronising manner, but it kind of speaks to what a great job Thomas Frank has done. I think he's one of my favourite managers in the Premier League. I think he's absolutely brilliant. And I guess it just speaks to the good job he has done, in that I think I speak for most fans now, where it's almost like Brentford are just sort of part of the furniture. You're such a professional, well-run outfit that even though you've only been in the Premier League for 4 years, I don't think many people at the beginning of the season go, when they're doing the sort of predictions, go, no one really mentions Brentford anymore, do they? Or that they'll be in and around it. 'Cause I feel like there's so many other clubs who are worse run, worse like on the pitch as well as off it. I don't know. I just think it's you're really like professional, decent, well-run outfit, and continually, to be fair, punching above your weight as far as general size and history of the club goes.
Yeah, I think that sums it up perfectly. I think you're right. We're definitely punching above our weight.
Didn't need to invite you on, did I?
See you then. Bye. But I think you're right. I think we do punch above our weight. I think it might help that teams that are coming up of recent years just have not been able to have the quality to compete and last a season in the Premier League, which is unfortunate, really, because it kind of makes you think, is that gap widening? And we don't want it to widen, because we want people teams coming up and staying, and you want to shake it up a little bit and have some teams going down that maybe have been there for a while and might need a reality check and go down.
No,
I don't know.
Totally, yeah. But, Everton.
They're not going down though.
No, not now. They've got the Moisés, yeah.
No, exactly. But yeah, it's a weird one, because I think Thomas Frank is brilliant. We all adore Thomas Frank, but we also know that we're getting closer and closer to the day that he's going to have to leave of his own accord.
Do you think? Because I don't like asking questions like that, and I've said this to you before when we spoke about Ivan Toney. I always find it so patronising and annoying that the state of modern day football now, where any smaller team, I'll put that in quote marks, dares to have a talented footballer or a really good manager, that the only dull question that's always posed is, how long do you think you're going to keep hold of them? When do you think they'll go to a bigger club? I just find it absolutely soul destroying. So I try not to ask those questions, but as you've brought it up.
I just do. I suppose the only issue I think Thomas Frank has is he might not be the fans' choice for a lot of clubs. And as much as I don't understand that thinking, when he was linked, he has occasionally been linked with bigger clubs. I mean, I saw Man United fans completely. Yeah, they completely dismissed him, the majority. They just didn't see what he could offer. And who knows, it might be too big a step. I don't know. But what he's great at doing is building a great culture, which clearly Manchester United lack. But that is something he's so good at doing if he's given the reins to do it, of course. So I do have that fear that eventually one team, and I've had conversations with him and I've asked him, please, I've sort of said, don't go, don't leave us. And he's also very honest. He's like, I wouldn't go unless it was a top 4 club, because he can't see it worth that sort of change, really. But it would have to take a big gamble by a top 4 club. I don't know if he's got that glamorous sort of name, really.
Well, and that's what's interesting, isn't it? He does lack that. Even though his hair is absolutely sensational, he does lack that. It really is. He does lack that sort of the sort of star quality almost, isn't it? And I think lots of teams get or fans get suckered into that stuff. Just because someone's, foreign or a little bit younger and a little bit more, well put together or stylish or whatever, that somehow makes a difference. What I find interesting about Thomas Frank, and again, I group him in the same category as Graham Potter, right? Whereas I think Brighton and Brentford, and I say this relentlessly on this platform, on the radio, if I'm asked anywhere, is that I think Brentford and Brighton are the 2 best run clubs in the Premier League. And I think because they're run so well as clubs, they make managers look better than they perhaps actually are. The default level is a bit like we're saying you're punching above your weight. I feel like that's certainly what Brighton did with Graham Potter, I think. And the nature of the club and the fan base are just by definition a little bit more patient, because of their history and where they've been before, the size of the fan base, blah, blah, blah. All of that important contextual information. And that's exactly what I thought when you said there about he's really good at building a culture. I think that the step for Graham Potter to Chelsea, as has been proved, was a little bit too much. Granted, it was a mad time to arrive at Chelsea, and that plays into it as well. But and that's my only question mark I ever have about Thomas Frank. I go, brilliant manager, but working at a really, really well-run club. And I feel like a step up, if he's saying top 4 only, I feel like that step might be too much. But, and I mean this respectfully as well, that there's probably a bracket of clubs, and I would include West Ham in this, they're just in that bracket of clubs between Brentford and the top 4. And like Aston Villa, I'd probably put in there as well. Just size-wise, maybe Everton, although they're not doing it on the pitch at the moment. Newcastle, I'd probably put in that bracket, Saudi money aside. Do you feel that perhaps that there would be some misgivings or some skills that Thomas Frank just doesn't need at a club like Brentford that he may find wanting if he made that big step like you're talking about?
Well,
bit long and convoluted, that question, wasn't it?
What are you actually asking me? Look, I think it's for him to leave.
Could he hack it at a top 4 club, I suppose?
Well, it's just whether you have the patience to. I mean, who knows? It's really hard to tell. How can you tell? Because you would like to think I'd love to think he could do it, but equally, I don't think it would be an overnight fix, obviously, if it was a Man United, for example, because that clearly runs a lot deeper than Ruben Amorim is having so many difficulties with them right now. I think, like I said, he said to me that he would never, ever find any club like Brentford again. The way it's run, the culture, he will find it very difficult to leave because of that, because he has that security. And that's the other thing as well. It is a security blanket that he has at Brentford because, I think it would have to have a disastrous season. I mean, even if we got relegated, I'd still want him as our manager because I just I think he's brilliant. But we'd have to have something really disastrous go wrong, I think, for him to be sacked. So that's why I think it's quite a cushy number for him in that sense. He can turn up to work knowing that, we're going through a really bad run of form right now, but I'm pretty safe, really, because he's just, like you say, he's so likable for a lot of people. They just like him, and I think we'd be foolish to sack him if we had a really bad run of form, for example. So yeah, I think the only thing that he might struggle with is whether fans would be patient enough to let him, turn things around. I mean, when he first took over at Brentford, I think his first, was it 7 or 8 games, didn't win first 7 or 8 games. And at that point, fans were thinking, this is the wrong choice. We've clearly not thought this one through. But then after that, it's a very different story. So yeah, it's just patience. I think that's what you'd have to ride out. But I don't know.
It's really. I agree, and I think a lot of the bigger clubs, and even West Ham included, I think fans are often part of the problem. Brentford fans, Brighton fans, fans of clubs that I think it's easier for a manager to succeed because they've probably got a little bit more patience and understanding. Those unreasonably high expectations aren't there. It's funny, I was at Thomas Frank's first ever press conference, his unveiling at Brentford. I think there were 3 of us in the porter cabin at the training ground. Yeah, and exactly that. It's just so, and now he's been linked with Manchester United. Look, Nat, I was at the 1-1 away game early this season, and it was just like, I just wasn't convinced. It was just fairly early on, but that was about it for me with the Lopetegui, when my patience finally run out. Listeners to this podcast might tell you that had happened before. But Bryan Mbuemo scores after a minute.
Yeah.
And then Souček, I think it was, who equalised for us. Yeah. It was a pretty bleak, drab, dull game. But I remember thinking then it's not good enough. What I also said, and I think to you in the build-up to that game, and I thought afterwards, was they're relying on Bryan Mbuemo an awful, awful lot. He's clearly your best player, so that sort of is what it is. But is that ringing true still? And with that sort of, it's a bit unsustainable sometimes if you're relying just on one person, as Chelsea found with Palmer.
Yeah. I think that at the start of the season, I think there was quite a reliance on him, but I think Johan Wissa has really come to the fore.
Yeah.
And he's now been linked with moves away as a result of that. Kevin Schade has popped up every now and then. He scored a hat-trick, didn't he, earlier this season, if I remember rightly. So there is an over-reliance on Bryan Mbuemo, and when he doesn't score, you do come away thinking, oh, really? We're expecting more from you. It's ridiculous, isn't it? But sometimes, because Bryan plays out on the right, he's brilliant at cutting inside like he does, and he's but teams have worked him out probably, so you can cancel him out. But that does mean, as I say, that Johan Wissa and Kevin Schade often can benefit from that. So like I said, I think the start of the season, yes, we were reliant on him, but I do think others have started to come to life a little bit more. That being said, we're not, as I say, in the best of run when it comes to form. So maybe I'm not. Maybe we are too reliant on Bryan Mbuemo and he's not scoring. So I don't know.
So Saturday afternoon, then 3:00 now, London Stadium. Are you confident? Are you what sort of Brentford can West Ham fans expect, sort of style-wise, tactics-wise, players-wise, anything like that?
Well, confidence-wise, we've won our last 2 on the road. So we've got to be a bit more optimistic. Bear in mind, we didn't win at all on the road before that. I would say I'm a bit more confident just because I feel like I don't know, maybe they feel like the shackles are off when they're away from home at the moment. Hence why they've scored 5 against Southampton, beat Palace 2-1. You could maybe look at that game and think, I don't know, maybe Palace deserves something out of that. But Selhurst Park isn't the easiest places to go to, and to get a result there was pretty good. So yeah, I am confident. And how will we play it? Well, I imagine we might let you have the ball a fair bit and just hope to counter. That's what I imagine we'll try and do. Although, what's the annoying thing is, how we had that, was it 3 games on the spin, scoring in the first minute because we just went at it ridiculously fast. We're not really doing that. And I'm like, come on, get up there. You know what you're supposed to do. You've done this 3 games in a row. So we're quite nice. We actually took the initiative and kind of surprised you in the sense of scoring early. But then we scored early against you and you still got something out of the game. So it's
true, it doesn't matter. You get into 4 minutes into games. Oh, still 0-0. Gosh, it's so boring. God, what's the matter with that?
I know. It's upsetting.
No, it's absolutely brilliant to have you on the podcast as always. I just thought I was going to read this out with James next week, which I will do anyway. But I thought you might enjoy this. Right, this is a comment on our YouTube channel from the last show. I enjoy listening to James, who's my co-host, James Jones. I enjoy listening to James. Always talks sense and is the voice of reason. But I find Will's forthright self-belief in his own opinions and refusal to listen to anyone else really grating and somewhat delusional. I thought Guilherme played really well against Chelsea, as has everyone else I've either listened to or read. So Will's completely out on his own. Even if he did play badly, it's just plain wrong to slag off a 19-year-old on YouTube. Although I doubt will ever accept he was being unfair. I honestly don't know how James manages to stay so calm across from that Wally on the pod every week.
Oh,
There we go. Clive Bennett, that was big
noise. You can't get over more. That's what it is.
That probably is what it is. Yeah. I don't think Clive's a Patreon member, but if you're not Clive, if you become a member, perhaps we'll do a James only episode for you. Patreon.com/We Are West Ham podcast. If you fancy sign up. Listen, Nat, thanks so much for joining us. As ever, a quick score prediction on the stadium Saturday.
Oh, I'm gonna go 3-1. Yeah.
3-1 to Brentford.
Yeah. We've got to turn on the start at some point.
Yeah, it's very much, I think fans are going, look, it's time for Potter to get some results now under his belt. We're sort of playing a bit more normal football and some decent performances, but we've got to turn those into results. I think this game, fans will be disappointed if we get anything less than 3 points, but not an easy task, as you've proved this season. Thanks so much for joining us, Nat. Thanks for listening. Everyone, follow us on all the socials. Sign up for Patreon if you want 4 ad-free listening and episodes 24 hours before everyone else. West Ham Brentford, 3 o'clock Saturday afternoon. Me and Jonesy will be back as usual to review that next week. Sorry to those of you who find me absolutely insufferable like Clive does, but I will still be the host. Join in, follow us on socials. Thanks for listening. Up the Hammers, West Ham are massive, and we'll speak to you next week.